You know what they say about assumptions making an ass out of you and me? Well, let me tell you about the day Crix9 learned that lesson the hard way. And by hard way, I mean having his facial structure rearranged by a human female who weighed about half as much as him. My name is Vorth Prime, and I've been teaching at the Galactic Academy for Advanced Species Integration for about 47 cycles now. I've seen it all, folks. Tentacled squillions trying to eat their homework, literally. Gaseous nebuloids accidentally poisoning their classmates during lunch. Crystal-based lithoids shattering when they get too excited about mathematics. But nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared me for the day we got our first batch of human students. The morning started like any other. I was reviewing my lesson plans, sipping my favorite blend of fermented algae juice, when Principal Zorth88 walked into my classroom. Now Zorth88 is a mantoid, standing about 8 feet tall with 4 arms and compound eyes that can see in 17 different spectrums. When he's nervous, his antennae twitch. That morning his antennae were doing a full-blown interpretive dance. Vorth Prime, he said, his voice crackling through his translator unit, we have a situation. I looked up from my steaming cup. What kind of situation? Are the Pyrothians setting things on fire again? Worse, he handed me a data pad. We're getting humans. I nearly choked on my algae juice. Humans? As in, the species from that Deathworld everyone's been talking about? The very same. Earth. Class 12 Deathworld. Gravity that would crush most species. An atmosphere that's basically poison to half the galaxy, and weather patterns that swing between freezing and boiling on a regular basis. I scrolled through the data pad. Says here they're sending 12 students. All juveniles. Ages 16 to 18 in their years. That's what worries me, Zorth88 said, his antennae now doing what looked like a tango. Their juveniles are apparently just as dangerous as their adults. Maybe more so, according to the reports. I laughed. How dangerous could children be? Come on, Zorth. They're kids. How bad can it be? 3 hours later, I was asking myself that same question while watching a human female named Maya Torres demonstrate something called arm wrestling to a group of fascinated Aquarian students. She was casually defeating opponents who outweighed her by several hundred pounds. The key, Maya was explaining, her voice carrying that peculiar human accent, is leverage and technique. You don't need to be the strongest if you're the smartest. A boulderoid student named Rock Massive, who was literally made of living stone and stood 9 feet tall, extended what passed for his arm. I challenge you, small human. Maya grinned. Oh, that grin. I should have recognized it as a warning sign. It was the same expression I'd seen on the faces of void sharks right before they devoured entire space stations. 30 seconds later, Rock Massive was staring in shock at his arm, which was now pressed flat against the table. The other students erupted in cheers and confused chittering. How? Rock Massive asked, his voice rumbling like an avalanche. Deathworld training, Maya replied simply. When everything on your planet is trying to kill you, you learn to fight back. And that should have been my first clue. But no, I was too busy being impressed by human ingenuity to notice the storm clouds gathering on the horizon. The storm had a name, Crix9. Crix9 was what you might call a problem student. He was a Dominator-class reptilian from the planet Scales Prime, a world where strength determined social hierarchy and weakness was considered a moral failing. Standing 7 feet tall with natural armor plating and muscles that could crush steel, Crix9 had never met a problem he couldn't solve with brute force. He also had the personality of a particularly unpleasant space fungus. These humans are weak, he announced during lunch, his voice booming across the cafeteria. Look at them. Soft skin, no natural weapons, no armor. They're prey animals pretending to be predators. Most of the human students ignored him. They'd learned, in their short time at the academy, that Crix9 was all bluster and limited vocabulary. But Maya Torres, who was sitting at a nearby table reading something called a comic book, looked up with interest. Did you say something? She asked politely. Crix9 turned his massive head toward her. I said you're weak. All humans are weak. Your species should have been eliminated by natural selection long ago. Maya closed her comic book carefully. I noticed she was reading something called The Incredible Hulk. How fitting. Ishin, I like to you'll say too. That's an interesting theory, she said, standing up. At 5 feet 4 inches, she barely came up to Crix 9's chest. Would you like to test it? The cafeteria went quiet. Even the noise eaters, who literally fed on sound, stopped munching. Crix 9 laughed, a sound like grinding metal. Test it? Against you? I could break you in half with one hand. Maybe, Maya said, her voice still perfectly calm. But you'd have to catch me first. What happened next is burned into my memory with the clarity of a supernova. Crix 9 lunged forward, his massive claws extended. It was a move that had worked on every opponent he'd ever faced. Brutal and decisive. Maya sidestepped. It wasn't a dramatic dodge or a flashy maneuver. She simply wasn't there anymore. Crix 9's momentum carried him forward, and suddenly Maya was behind him, her small fist connecting with a pressure point at the base of his skull. Crix 9 stumbled, more confused than hurt. He spun around, swiping with his claws. Maya ducked under the swing and drove her elbow into his solar plexus. The impact sounded like a thunderclap. The 7-foot-tall reptilian doubled over, gasping for breath. First lesson, Maya said conversationally. Never assume your opponent is weak just because they look different. Crix 9 straightened up, his eyes blazing with fury. Like he shot. He charged again, this time with both claws extended. Maya waited until the last possible second, then dropped to the ground and swept his legs. Physics did the rest. Crix 9's own momentum sent him crashing into a table, which exploded into splinters under his weight. The cafeteria erupted in chaos. Students scattered in all directions, some screaming, others cheering. The tentacled squillions were making high-pitched whistling sounds that I'd learned meant they were either terrified or extremely excited. Crix 9 extracted himself from the wreckage, now bleeding from several cuts. His armor plating had protected him from serious injury, but his pride was thoroughly shattered. "I'll kill you," he roared, all pretense of civilized behavior abandoned. Second lesson, Maya said, backing away slowly. Losing your temper makes you predictable. She was right. Crix 9's next attack was wild, undisciplined. He swung his massive fists in wide arcs, trying to connect with anything he could reach. Maya weaved between his attacks like she was dancing, occasionally landing quick strikes on vulnerable points. It was beautiful, in a terrifying sort of way. Third lesson, Maya continued. As Crix 9's breathing became increasingly labored, endurance matters more than strength. That's when I realized what was happening. Maya wasn't trying to overpower Crix 9. She was wearing him down, letting his own aggression exhaust him. It was like watching a matador work a bull, except the matador was a teenage girl from a Deathworld and the bull was a 7-foot-tall armored predator. Crix 9's attacks became slower, sloppier. His armor plating, designed to protect him from external threats, was now working against him. The weight was draining his energy, and the adrenaline was wearing off. Maya saw her opening. She feinted left, then pivoted right. Crix 9, exhausted and desperate, took the bait. As he lunged forward, Maya planted her feet and delivered a perfect uppercut to his jaw. The sound was like a sonic boom. Crix 9's head snapped back, his eyes rolled up, and all 7 feet of armored reptilian crashed to the ground like a felled tree. The cafeteria fell silent except for the sound of Crix 9's unconscious snoring. Maya stood over him, not even breathing hard. She looked around at the circle of shocked faces, then shrugged. Anyone else want to discuss the weakness of humans? No one volunteered. I rushed over to check on Crix 9. His jaw was definitely broken, along with several teeth. His nose was bent at an angle that nature never intended. The medical scanners would later reveal a concussion, 3 fractured ribs, and extensive bruising. He'd need reconstructive surgery and about 6 weeks of recovery time. All of this damage had been inflicted by a human female who weighed approximately 120 pounds. Maya, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. What exactly did they teach you on Earth? She picked up her comic book from where she'd dropped it. Basic self-defense. You know, the usual stuff. How to handle bullies. How to survive in hostile environments. How to turn an attacker's strength against them. That was basic self-defense? Well, I'm not even good at it. You should see my friend Jake. He's been doing mixed martial arts since he was 5. Or my sister Rosa. She's in the military. I felt a chill run down my spine. There are more of you like this? Maya laughed, a sound that somehow managed to be both cheerful and terrifying. Professor Vorth Prime, there are about 8 billion humans on Earth. And we've all been raised on a world that's constantly trying to kill us. What did you expect? Before I could answer, the Academy's security team arrived. They were a mix of different species, all heavily armed and trained to handle dangerous situations. They took one look at the unconscious Crix-9, then at Maya, who was calmly reading her comic book. What happened here? Asked Security Chief Brax-7, a mantoid like Principal Zorth-88. Crix-9 attacked Maya, I explained. She defended herself. Brax-7's antennae twitched. She did this to him? By herself? In about 3 minutes, confirmed another student, a gaseous nebuloid named Puff Alpha. It was incredible. The security team exchanged glances. I could see them mentally revising their threat assessment protocols. We'll need to file a report, Brax-7 said eventually, and we'll need to review our safety procedures. What about Crix-9? I asked. He started the fight. Oh, he'll be disciplined, Brax-7 assured me. Assuming he survives the reconstructive surgery. But right now I'm more concerned about the implications of having students who can do this kind of damage. Maya looked up from her comic book. If it helps, most humans are actually pretty peaceful. We only get violent when we're threatened or when someone picks on people we care about. That's somewhat reassuring, Brax-7 said, though his antennae suggested otherwise. As the security team carried Crix-9 to the medical bay, I found myself staring at Maya. She looked so normal, so harmless. Just a teenage girl with dark hair and bright eyes, reading a comic book about a green monster who got stronger when he was angry. Maya, I said carefully, can I ask you something? Sure, Professor. How did you know you could win that fight? She smiled, that same terrifying smile from earlier. I didn't. But on Earth we have a saying, it's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog. Crix-9 was bigger and stronger, but he was also overconfident and out of his element. I just had to make sure the fight happened on my terms. And if you had lost? Maya's expression grew serious. Then I would have made sure he remembered it. Even if I couldn't win, I could make sure he never picked on anyone else again. I felt another chill. You would have sacrificed yourself? If necessary. That's what humans do. We protect each other, even at the cost of our own safety. It's one of the reasons we survived on Earth for so long. As I watched Maya return to her reading, I realized that everything we thought we knew about humans was wrong. They weren't just physically dangerous because of their Deathworld origins. They were dangerous because they had developed something far more terrifying than claws or armor or poison. They had developed the willingness to sacrifice everything for principles they believed in. And now 12 of them were attending our academy, learning alongside the children of the galaxy's most powerful species. I had a feeling that life at the Galactic Academy was about to become very, very interesting. The medical bay's emergency alarm started blaring. Apparently, Crix-9 had woken up and was demanding a rematch. I looked at Maya, who was now reading a page about something called the Hulk's Greatest Victories. This is going to be a long semester, I muttered. Maya looked up and grinned. Don't worry, Professor. We humans are very adaptable. I'm sure we'll all get along just fine. Somehow, that didn't make me feel any better. The next morning, I arrived at the academy to find Principal Zorth-88 pacing in his office. His antennae weren't just twitching anymore, they were doing what looked like an entire ballet performance. "Vorth Prime," he exclaimed as I entered. "We have a problem." Actually, scratch that. We have multiple problems, all human-shaped. I poured myself a cup of algae juice and settled into the chair across from his desk. What happened now? Word of yesterday's incident has spread, not just through the academy, but across the entire sector. The Reptilian Council is demanding Maya Torres be expelled. The Dominator High Command is calling for her arrest. And somehow the Galactic News Network got hold of the security footage. I nearly choked on my drink. The whole galaxy saw it. The whole galaxy saw a 120-pound human female demolish a 7-foot-tall armored predator in 3 minutes. The video has been viewed over 2 billion times in the last 12 hours. He activated his wall display, and suddenly I was watching Maya's fight from multiple angles. The footage was crystal clear, showing every perfectly executed move, every calculated strike. It was even more impressive on replay. The comments section is particularly illuminating. Zorth88 continued. Half the galaxy is terrified. The other half is, well, let me read you some of these. He scrolled through the comments. This one's from a crystalline collective representative. Note to self, never anger humans. This one's from a Void Shark Pack leader. We formally request humans be classified as apex predators. And this one's from the tentacled Squillian ambassador. We withdraw our previous offer to include Earth in our dinner rotation. I winced. It gets worse, doesn't it? Oh, much worse. The Galactic Combat Federation wants to recruit all 12 human students. 3 different mercenary guilds have submitted formal job offers, and the warrior caste of the Mandible Empire has requested permission to study human combat techniques. What about the other human students? How are they handling the attention? Zorth88's antennae did a particularly dramatic flourish. That's where it gets interesting. Go check Classroom 7. I made my way through the corridors, noting the way other students stepped aside when they saw me coming. Word had apparently gotten out that I was the humans' teacher. I wasn't sure if that made me famous or infamous. Classroom 7 was packed, not just with students but with faculty members, visiting dignitaries, and what appeared to be several news crews. At the center of it all sat Maya Torres, looking remarkably calm for someone who had become the most famous student in galactic history. The key thing to understand, Maya was saying to a rapt audience, is that humans don't fight because we're naturally violent. We fight because we've learned that sometimes violence is the only language bullies understand. A gaseous nebuloid student raised a tentacle. But how did you know exactly where to hit him? Anatomy classes, Maya replied with a shrug. Plus Crix9 was kind enough to telegraph every move. When you're that angry, subtlety goes out the window. I noticed several other human students scattered throughout the crowd. There was Jake Morrison, a tall boy with calloused hands who kept fielding questions about something called mixed martial arts. Rosa Martinez, Maya's sister, was discussing military strategy with a group of fascinated mantoid officers. And Tommy Chen was demonstrating pressure points on a volunteer boulderoid who kept exclaiming in amazement. Professor Vorth Prime, Maya called out when she spotted me. Perfect timing. These folks have some questions about human education. A reporter from the Galactic News Network thrust a microphone in my face. Professor, is it true that all human children receive combat training? Well, that's not exactly, I stammered. We call it physical education, Jake interjected helpfully. Sports, basically. Football, basketball, wrestling, martial arts. You know, fun stuff. The reporter's eyes widened. You consider combat training to be recreational? Sure, said Rosa, though the real training happens at home. My dad taught me how to box when I was 8. Said I needed to know how to defend myself. Your father taught you violence as a child? Asked a horrified Aquarian diplomat. He taught me confidence, Rosa corrected. There's a difference. When you know you can handle yourself, you don't have to prove it to anyone. I was beginning to understand why the rest of the galaxy was so unnerved. To humans, this was normal. To everyone else, it was terrifying. What about your world? Asked a crystalline collective representative. We've heard it's classified as a Class 12 Deathworld. Tommy laughed. Class 12? That's it? Have you seen the weather reports lately? We had a hurricane last month that would have been classified as a Class 15 event. And that was just Tuesday. You survived a Class 15 weather event? The representative's crystal structure actually flickered with shock. Survived it. We threw a hurricane party, made some great memories. I watched the faces of the assembled beings grow increasingly pale, blue, green, or whatever color indicated distress in their particular species. The humans, meanwhile, seemed to be enjoying themselves immensely. Perhaps, I suggested, we should discuss this more privately. Oh, no need, said Maya cheerfully. We're happy to answer questions. Transparency is important for interspecies relations. That's when the second shoe dropped. The classroom doors burst open, and in walked a delegation of reptilian warriors. At their head was a massive figure I recognized from the news broadcasts, General Scar Prime, the legendary champion of the Dominator High Command. The room fell silent. Where General Scar Prime rumbled, his voice like an earthquake, is the human who defeated Crix 9? Maya stood up slowly. That would be me. General Scar Prime studied her for a long moment. At 8 feet tall and covered in battle scars, he was an intimidating figure. His natural armor was polished to a mirror shine, and his claws were sharp enough to cut through steel. You are much smaller than I expected, he said finally. I get that a lot, Maya replied. I have come to challenge you to honorable combat. The reputation of the Dominator caste has been damaged by your victory over Crix 9. I will restore it. And the room erupted in gasps and worried chittering. A challenge from General Scar Prime was essentially a death sentence. He had never lost a fight in over 300 battles. Maya looked around the room, then back at the general. With respect, sir, I'm not interested in fighting you. You refuse my challenge? General Scar Prime's voice rose dangerously. I'm declining your invitation to mutual violence, Maya corrected. There's a difference. Cowardice is cowardice, regardless of how you phrase it. I saw Maya's expression change slightly. The friendly, patient look disappeared, replaced by something much colder. General, she said quietly, I didn't fight Crix 9 because I wanted to. I fought him because he was bullying my friends and threatening innocent people. You want to fight me because your feelings are hurt. See the difference? I see a weak creature making excuses. Maya sighed. You know what? Fine, but I have conditions. General Scar Prime's eyes narrowed. You dare to set conditions? Oh, I absolutely dare. First condition, this isn't a fight to the death. We go until one of us yields or can't continue. Second condition, we do this publicly so everyone can see exactly what happens. Third condition, when I win. You acknowledge that strength isn't just about size and claws. Deal? Say. The general's laugh was like grinding stone. When you win? Child, I have conquered armies. I have personally defeated over 50 different species in combat. I am the apex predator of my world. And I'm a teenager from a Deathworld who's really tired of bullies, Maya replied. Should be interesting. An hour later, we were in the academy's main arena. Word had spread quickly, and the stands were packed with students, faculty, and what seemed like half the sector's population. The Galactic News Network had set up multiple camera angles. This was going to be the most watched event in recent history. General Scar Prime entered the arena to thunderous applause from the reptilian delegation. He was a magnificent sight, 8 feet of muscle and armor, his claws gleaming in the arena lights. Maya entered to much more subdued applause. She was wearing simple athletic clothes and had tied her hair back in a practical ponytail. Next to the general, she looked like a child playing dress-up. This is insane, I muttered to myself. No, said a voice beside me. I turned to see Jake Morrison settling into the seat next to mine. This is Maya being Maya. She's going to be fine. How can you be so calm? That's General Scar Prime. Jake shrugged. Maya's been dealing with bullies her whole life. Size doesn't matter when you know what you're doing. The arena announcer, a mantoid with a voice like a foghorn, began the introductions. Ladies, gentlemen, and sentient beings of all classifications, welcome to what promises to be the most extraordinary combat demonstration in galactic history. The crowd roared its approval. In the red corner, weighing in at 847 pounds, standing 8 feet tall, with a combat record of 312 wins and 0 losses, was General Scar Prime of the Dominator High Command. The reptilian section erupted in cheers and roars. In the blue corner, weighing in at 121 pounds, standing 5 feet 4 inches, representing the species recently discovered on the Class 12 Deathworld of Earth, Torres. The human section of the crowd, which had grown considerably since the morning, cheered enthusiastically. Everyone else seemed to be holding their breath. The combatants approached the center. Maya walked to the middle of the arena, her steps confident and measured. General Scar Prime stalked toward her, his claws clicking on the floor. "Last chance to yield, little human," he growled. Maya looked up at him calmly. "Last chance to reconsider, General. I don't want to embarrass you in front of your people." His roar of fury could probably be heard in orbit. The referee, a neutral crystalline being, raised its appendage. "Combat begins in 3, 2, 1, begin." General Scar Prime charged immediately, his massive claws extended. It was the same strategy that had worked against hundreds of opponents, overwhelming force applied with devastating speed. Maya waited until he was almost on top of her, then stepped aside and stuck out her foot. The general, carried by his own momentum, tripped and crashed face first into the arena floor. The impact shook the entire building. The crowd gasped. Maya stepped back, giving him room to get up. "Physics is a wonderful thing, isn't it?" General Scar Prime scrambled to his feet, his armor now scratched and his pride thoroughly wounded. "Lucky," he snarled. "If you say so," Maya replied. His second charge was more controlled, but Maya was ready for it. She ducked under his swinging claws and delivered a sharp elbow strike to his ribs. The general's armor absorbed most of the impact, but he still staggered. "Your armor's impressive," Maya commented, backing away again. "But it's also heavy. How long can you keep this up?" The general responded by launching a series of rapid attacks, his claws whistling through the air. Maya weaved between them like she was dancing, occasionally landing quick strikes on exposed joints and pressure points. It was exactly like her fight with Crix 9, but on a much larger scale. The general was stronger, faster, and more skilled than his subordinate, but he was also making the same fundamental mistake. He was trying to overpower someone who refused to play by his rules. "Stand still and fight," he roared after a particularly impressive series of missed swipes. "Why would I do that?" Maya asked, genuine curiosity in her voice. "That would be tactically stupid." I could see the frustration building in the general's movements. His attacks were becoming wilder, less precise. His breathing was getting heavier. The weight of his armor, combined with the adrenaline and exertion, was taking its toll. Maya, meanwhile, looked like she was out for a casual jog. "You know," she said, easily avoiding another clumsy charge, "this is exactly what's wrong with your whole philosophy. You think strength is about domination, about crushing your enemies. But real strength is about protecting what matters to you. Spare me your philosophy lectures." General Scar Prime lunged forward desperately. Maya sidestepped and, for the first time in the fight, went on the offensive. She grabbed his extended arm, used his own momentum against him, and executed a perfect throw that sent all 8 feet of armored reptilian flying through the air. The general crashed into the arena wall with a sound like a collapsing building. The crowd went completely silent. General Scar Prime tried to get up, failed, and slumped back against the wall. His armor was cracked in several places, and his left arm hung at an odd angle. Maya walked over and knelt beside him. "Are you hurt badly?" The general stared at her in shock. You're not going to finish me? Why would I? You're not a threat anymore. And you're not really a bad person, you're just stuck in a system that taught you the wrong lessons. I don't understand." Maya stood up and offered him her hand. "That's okay. Understanding comes with time." For now, let's get you to the medical bay. The general stared at her outstretched hand for a long moment. Then, slowly, he reached out and took it. The crowd erupted. As Maya helped General Scar Prime to his feet, I realized that something fundamental had just changed. Not just in the arena, but in the entire galaxy's perception of humanity. They hadn't just witnessed a fight. They had witnessed a demonstration of what humans called mercy. The most dangerous warrior in the Dominator High Command had been defeated by a teenage girl who then offered to help him up. Over the following days, the effects rippled throughout the galaxy. The Reptilian High Command formally apologized for their species' behavior and requested cultural exchange programs. The warrior caste of the Mandible Empire asked for permission to study human philosophy alongside human combat techniques. The Galactic News Network started running a series called Understanding Humans that became the most popular educational program in history. But the most significant change happened right here at the Academy. Students who had previously solved conflicts through intimidation or violence began asking the human students for advice on alternative approaches. Bullying incidents dropped to nearly zero. Academic performance improved across all species as students felt safer and more confident in their environment. Maya, for her part, seemed largely unaware of the revolution she had started. She continued reading her comic books, helping other students with their homework, and politely declining interview requests. "It's not really that complicated," she told me one afternoon as we walked through the Academy gardens. "Most bullies are just scared people who never learned better ways to handle their problems. Show them there's another way, and they usually take it. And if they don't..." Maya shrugged. "Then you remind them why cooperation is better than conflict. Usually that's enough." I looked at this remarkable young woman who had single-handedly changed the social dynamics of an entire galactic sector. "Maya, do you realize what you've accomplished? I helped some people learn to get along better. That's what humans do." "That's what humans do," I repeated thoughtfully. "You know, I'm beginning to think the galaxy has been looking at your species all wrong." Maya smiled, that same warm expression that had once seemed so terrifying. "We're not monsters, Professor. We're just people who learned to survive in a tough neighborhood. And now we're here, ready to help make the galaxy a little bit safer for everyone." As I watched her walk away, I couldn't help but think that the galaxy was about to become a very different place. Not because humans were the strongest or the most advanced, but because they had something that had been missing from galactic civilization for far too long. They had hope. And apparently hope was contagious. 6 months later, I received a message from General Scar Prime. He was now working as a mediator in interspecies conflicts, using techniques he had learned from studying human diplomatic methods. Attached to his message was a photo of him teaching a group of young reptilians something called conflict resolution. He was smiling. I forwarded the message to Maya, who was now in her second year at the Academy and had been elected student body president by a landslide. Her response was typically human, "See? I told you understanding comes with time." "Indeed it does, Maya. Indeed it does."